Hey guys, in this tutorial we're going to be taking a look at Ractive.js, and this is a JavaScript template driven UI library. And I know that there's many different JS frameworks out there. I've done videos on a lot of them, and this one, I chose this one today because it's really easy to learn, and also we just did a course on it at eduonix.com, so I figured I'd make a quick video on it. Now, in terms of other technologies like it, I think that React.js is probably the closest to how Ractive works. It's strictly in the view, it has no back-end capabilities, and it's used to build interactive UIs. Alright, the main difference from React, I think, is how it utilizes templates. And it kind of reminds me of Meteor.js in that aspect. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump in. This is the official website, and there's pretty good documentation. There's a 60-second setup here, which kind of just gets you set up with a very, very basic idea of how it works. There's tutorials, which are really nice. Examples, okay, different UIs, different applications that use Ractive, and documents, and then there's an area for all the plugins. Alright, so there's quite a bit to it, but it's pretty easy to understand. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're just going to create an index.html file, and we're going to work from that. So I'm going to create a folder. We'll just call this, we'll call it Ractive Sandbox. Okay, and then in there we're going to create just a index.html file. Now, Ractive is available through NPM if you want to use something like Webpack and you want kind of a better application environment, and I get into that in the course, but for now I just want to focus on the syntax and how it works, so I think that this is a little bit easier. Alright, so we'll go ahead and open this in Chrome. Alright, so let's just get some standard HTML in here. We'll add a title, and all we have to do to get it set up and be able to use it is just include this script tag right here. Okay, so we're going to put that, actually we're going to put that down in the body, just like that. And there's basically three different areas that we need to set up. First is going to be where we want this to be output. So we're going to create a div, and I'm going to give it an ID of app. Okay, similar to how Angular works. And then we're going to go down, actually we're going to go above the script tag, and that's where our template's going to be. So templates are going to have a script tag and an ID, which I'm just going to call template. And then we need to add the type, which is going to be text/Ractive. Okay, and then down here is where our instance will go. So script, and what we'll do is create a variable, Ractive, and set that to new Ractive, and then we're going to pass in some curly braces, and we need to specify a couple things. First is going to be the element that we want it to be output, which is a div with the ID of app. So we're going to say L or EL, and then pass in the ID of app. Okay, it doesn't have to be an ID, it could be a class, or it could be just an element itself. And then we need to tell it where the template is. So template, and that has an ID of template. Alright, and then we can also pass along any data we want, which I'll just leave blank for now. But let's go up here in the template, and we'll say this is my app. Alright, so let's go ahead and save that. And if we go over to index.html and reload, we get this is my app. Alright, I'm just going to open the console up with F12. And you can see that Ractive is in debug mode. Okay, so that's essentially the foundation for Ractive. We have our instance here, we have our template, and we have whatever element we're going to output it in. Alright, now if we want to add some dynamic data, we can go down here and let's say greeting we'll set that to hello world. Okay, so now up here, let's go ahead and put in an H1, and we're going to use Mustache. That's what that's the template engine that Ractive uses, and we'll say greeting, save it, reload, and we get hello world. Now we'll add another piece of data here. We'll say name, set that to Brad, and we'll say greeting, my name is, and then throw in name. Okay, so we get hello world, my name is Brad. So we can also use these dynamic variables inside of a style tag if we want to change the way it looks. So for instance, in our H1, we'll put a style, and we'll set color to color, and down here we'll define a variable called color, and we'll set it to red. Reload, and you can see that it's now red. Now Ractive has an extensive API that we can use. So if we go to docs, you'll see down here to the left there's all different types of methods that we can use. So one of them is set. If we check that out, so the way that we use this is by saying Ractive.set, and then the key path, and then the value. Okay, key path is basically a location of a piece of data. All right, so if we go down here, and we'll take this variable Ractive that we created and say .set, and let's say we want to set the color. We'll set the color to green. Okay, save that, reload, and now you can see it's changed to green. We can also have get. So if we say, let's do console.log, and we'll say Ractive.get, and we'll pass in here name, and then if we go and reload, you'll see down here it's going to output the name value. Now we can also nest properties. So let's say in the data we want to add an address, and we're going to set that to be an object, and we'll say street, we'll say 49 Main Street, and then we'll do city, Boston, and then state. Alright, so now up in our template, let's go ahead and put in a UL. And in here we'll say, what is it, address dot street. Copy that. Then we'll do city and state. So if we go ahead and reload, we get our address. Now notice that we have to do this address.street, address.city. There's something we can do to kind of make this a little easier, especially if you have multiple levels here. I mean, we only have one here, but you may have objects with objects with objects. So what we can do is wrap this in a with statement. So we're going to say with address, and then we need to end that with, and then we can get rid of this address, save, reload, and you can see it's still there. Now if I was to remove the with, we're going to get an error, okay, or not an error, but it's just not going to work. So we can do that, and we can also shorten this up and get rid of the with and just do the number sign address, and then down here address, and that works. Now another thing we can do is store arrays down here. So after address we'll put a comma, and let's say friends. Okay, so friends will set to an array, and we could make it just a normal array, but what I'm going to do is put some objects in here. Okay, so each friend will be an object with a name, we'll do name and let's do age. Okay, so there's one friend. And we'll do one more. We'll say name Jen. Alright, so we have an array of objects here. And if we go up and go under the UL, I'm just going to create a heading here. Say friends. And if we try to just put in friends like that and reload, you'll see that we just get this object, and then obviously we don't want that. So what we need to do is make it into a section. So we'll add a number sign here and then a closing tag, and then we can access any of the fields we have in here, so name and age. So let's actually wrap this in a UL, and then in here we'll put an LI, and we'll say name dash and then the age. Okay, so if we save that and reload, now we get a list with each name and the age. Now we also have conditionals, and even if I set this friends right here to false and we reload, it's not going to show up. Okay, it's as easy as that. Instead of doing some kind of if statement up here, which we can do, which I'll show you in a second, we can just set this to false and the section won't show. Even if we put something in here that's not one of those fields, it's still not going to show. Nothing inside of that section will work or will be displayed. Alright, so I'm going to go back and just put those in. Now we can also do if statements. We can do different conditionals. So let's go down here and put a comma, and then we'll say show, let's do show address. Okay, and we're going to set that to false by default. So now if we go up here and where we have our address, where we have the UL, I'm going to surround that. I'm going to say if show address, and then down here we'll close off that if. Okay, so now if I save that and reload, you'll see the address isn't showing. Okay, if I change it to true, reload, it will show. Now we can also add in an else. So we'll say if show address, and then down here we'll say else. We'll say address hidden. So if we save that, actually let's go change this to false. Reload, and we get address hidden. Now, in addition to using sections like we did with friends, we can also iterate using each. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste in a property called jobs, which is an array of different jobs that the users had. Alright, so we have company, title, and the years that they worked there. This should actually be years. Okay, so what we'll do is go up here and let's add an H3, and we'll say work history, and let's do, we'll put a UL. Actually, you know what, let's do a table. We'll make it look a little better. Okay, so table will have table row, and these will be headings. So this one will say ID. This one will be, let's see, company. This will be job title and years. Okay, so that's our heading. And let's go ahead and copy that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it in each. We'll say each jobs. We got to close it. And then we'll paste that in. Okay, now these are going to be changed to TDs. Okay, so the ID one, I'm going to leave that for now, and then this we're going to change to company. This one will be changed to title, and this one will be years. Alright, so let's go ahead and save that and reload. And now you can see that we have our table with our company, job title, and years. Now for the ID, we're going to use the index, and the way that we can get that is if we go right here and we put a colon and then a variable, let's say I, and then we'll replace this with I, reload, and you can see we get the index of each item. And let's just grab Bootstrap to make this look a little better. We'll just grab the CDN. Throw that up here and say href, paste that link in. Okay, and let's just add a class to our, where is it, our table. Alright, so that looks a little better. Now if we wanted to add on to this, actually let's wrap it in a container. Okay, that should push everything to the middle. So if we want to add on to this, what we can do is go down to the bottom here and we'll say dot push. We want to push onto jobs, and we're going to paste in a new object to add. So let's say company, just say test company, and what else, title, we'll say lead developer, and years we'll say 2. So let's save that and reload. And you can see that test company has been added on to the end here. If we want to get rid of one of these, we can use splice. So we'll say Ractive.splice, and that's going to take in jobs, and then we want the index of the one we want to delete. Let's say we want to delete tech guy, which has the index of 2. And then this parameter is how many we want to delete from there. So we just want 1. So reload, and you'll see that tech guy is gone. If I was to change this to 3, it's going to get tech guy and then the ones after it as well. Alright, I'm just going to comment that out. Alright, so now we're going to move on to events. Okay, so events are pretty easy. They have what's called an event directive, and if you've worked with Angular, you probably know what a directive is. It's basically just a custom HTML tag or element. Okay, so we're gonna go, let's go right into where the address is, and let's see where we have address hidden. Actually, let's go under the whole thing, under the if, and we're gonna create a button. Okay, now for the event directive, we're going to use on-click. Okay, let's say show address. Okay, now we can make this go to a function that we can create. So let's call this show address. And then we'll go down here. And the way that we do this is to use the on method. So we're going to say Ractive.on, and then the name of the function, which is show address, and then the second parameter here will be self-calling function, and then let's say we'll do Ractive.set, and we want to set show address to true. Alright, so let's go ahead and save that and reload. Click that, and you see we get our address. Now, if we click it again, it's not going to hide it because we just set it up to show it. Now, a better way to do this would be to use Ractive.toggle. Okay, so if we toggle and then we get rid of the second parameter and we reload, shows it, hit it again, hides it. Okay, so it just toggles it from true to false. And if we want to change the text in the button, we can do that. So we'll go up here and let's do, oops, why did that show up? So we'll say if show address, and then we'll do else. Actually, if it's show address, then we want the text to say hide address, else show address. Okay, so we reload, it says show address, click it, says hide address. Now, in addition to these proxy events, we can also have method calls where we can kind of encapsulate it a little more. So let's say under our work history, we're going to put, under the table, let's put a button, and we're going to set on click, we'll say add job, and in here we're going to say add job, and I'm going to add parentheses on the end this time. And then down here, we don't want to be in the data, we want to, let's go right above it, and we're going to say add job. Actually, go like that and say function. Make sure you put a comma there. And then what we'll do is grab this Ractive.push and cut it. And up here, we'll go ahead and paste that in. And let's save that, reload. See, we have an add job button. I click that, and the job gets added. Okay, so this is a way to kind of keep everything encapsulated in the instance. Now let's take it a step further and encapsulate this in a component. Okay, so this whole work history thing, let's make this a component. So we'll go right above where our main instance is, and we're going to create a variable, and we'll call it, we'll just call it jobs, and we're going to set that to Ractive.extend. Alright, and then in here we'll pass in some curly braces, and same thing, we're going to do a template just like we did with the main instance, and let's give it an ID of jobs. Alright, and then we're going to use what's called a lifecycle method, and basically these are different methods or events that get fired off at certain times during a life cycle, during the rendering of a component or an application. So the one that we're going to be using here is onInit. So we're going to say onInit function. Alright, and then pretty much everything we do is going to go in here. Alright, now we need to create another script tag under the main template here. So let's go right here, and we'll say script, give it an ID of jobs and a type of text / Ractive. And for now, let's just say this is jobs component. And then we need to specify it as a component down here in the instance. So let's go right under template, and we'll say components, which is I believe it's an array. No, it's an object. All right, and then we're going to say jobs and assign that to that jobs variable right here. Okay, so now it knows that jobs is a component. Now to display it, we're going to go into our main template here, And a component syntax is just basically an HTML tag, so jobs. All right, now if we save that, let's see, unexpected identifier on 80. Oh, we didn't put a comma here. Okay, so you can see right here, this is the jobs component. Now what I want to do is move this into the jobs component. So let's go to our main template here, and we'll grab from here down to here, and we'll cut it, and then we're going to just paste that right in here in the jobs template. Okay, so if I save and reload, now it's coming from the template. Now I want this to be isolated. Basically, I want it to have its own data. Right now the data is in this main instance. So up here we're going to say isolated, and we're going to set that to true. Alright, and now if I reload, you can see that the data is no longer there. So what we have to do is create in here data, and then we're going to grab this. Okay, we'll cut that, and then we'll just paste that up here. Okay, because the idea is we want everything encapsulated, the data, any functions, everything, events. So if I reload, now you can see that the data is back. Now we do have this warning down here saying we shouldn't store an object, an array of objects directly in here, but normally this would come from some kind of database or API, but we're not doing that. We're just sticking with the view because that's what Ractive is, and I don't want to introduce any other technologies, so we're just going to keep it and just ignore this warning. Alright, and if I click add job, you can see that it's no longer working because our component is isolated. So what we'd have to do is take this add job and cut it and put it up here. Now that we're working in the component, we don't want to use this Ractive variable here. We want to use this. Okay, so save that, reload, and now the add job works. Alright, so now we're going to get into data binding, and Ractive uses two-way data binding much like Angular. Okay, so if you have experience with Angular, data binding works very similar. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our component template, and right above that button we're going to put in a form tag. Okay, and then let's take this and copy it or cut it, paste it in the form, and instead of this on click, we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to put inside the form tag on submit, and we'll set that to add job. And let's put an input with the type of text. Okay, and let's add a class as well. We'll add a bootstrap class of form control. And this here, we're going to change that to a submit. We'll say input type is going to be submit, and then value will be submit. Alright, so let's go ahead and reload that. Let's make this look a little better. We'll put the button, let's put a class here for the submit button. We'll say btn default, which is a bootstrap class. Alright, and what we'll do, let's also put in a placeholder, and we'll just say add job. Okay, so when we submit this, you can see that it does add it, but then it flashes away. That's because the form is actually getting submitted, and we don't want that. So what we can do is go down to add job, and we just want to go to the very end and say return false. Okay, so now if I save that, now that didn't work either. Let's see. Return false. That should do it. All right, you know what? We're going to do this a little bit different. I'm not going to have it like this. I'm going to put this inside of on init because I think that's what the issue is. So up where we have the add job, I'm going to remove the parentheses. And then in here, we're going to say this dot on add job function. And then we'll grab the push and also the return false, and we'll paste that in there. Let me just tab this over. Okay, and then we can get rid of this add job. Okay, so if we now reload and we submit, now you can see it's getting added. Now, test company is being added because we haven't specified anything different. So what I want to do is to show you how this data binding works. Inside of our data in the component, we're going to go right after this jobs, and let's say new job, which I'm going to set to, for now we'll set it to an empty string. And then up in the input, which is right here, we're going to say value equals double curly braces and new job. Okay, now that's going to be bound to wherever we put this variable. So let's put it right under the form. We'll say new job and reload. And now as I start typing, you can see that data is being binded and it's going both ways. Whatever we put in here is going to output here. And then also, if we were to set this to test, you can see that it's also filling in the value of test. Okay, so that's how data binding works. It's really easy and also very helpful. All right, so what we want to do is, obviously we don't want to echo our typing down here, so we're going to get rid of that, or this new job. I just wanted to show you how that works. So now what I want to do is whatever we type in here, I want to add as a job, okay? But we're going to need a couple more fields. So we'll have company, job title, and years. So let's grab this text input, and we're going to paste two more inputs in. Okay, this is going to be the company, so we'll change this to add company, add title, add years. Okay, and then let's change this to job title, no, job company, job title, and job years. And then we're going to add those down here. All right. So then what we want to do is when we submit it, it's going to go to this add job, and let's create a new object here. So we'll say var new job, set it to an object. Okay, and I'm just going to grab this. Okay, now we want to fill this in with the form values, and we can do that with this dot get and pass in company, or what is it, job company, and then we'll copy that. This will be job title, and this will be job years. Okay, and then we want to push onto it right here, except we're just going to put in new job. Alright, so let's save that, reload, and let's say test company, some title, and 4 years. Submit, and you can see that those have now been added. Okay, and if we want to clear the form afterwards, we can do that as well. If we go down here, and let me just bring this back. we can say this dot get job company. I'm sorry, not get, set job company to blank, and same thing with the other two fields, job title, job years. Okay, we'll reload, put something in here, submit, and you can see that the form cleared. Alright, so we are getting there. Let me just separate these inputs a little bit here. We'll put, let's put a title here. I just want to make it look a little better. And then we'll put, actually let's wrap it in a bootstrap class. So div class equals form group. All right. There we go. So that looks a little better. Now the next thing I want to talk about is our observers. And observers, basically we can make it so that we can watch a key path for changes. And a key path meaning the location of some kind of data. So we're going to go down to our main instance, and let's say we want to watch for the name. Alright, so down here we're going to say Ractive.observe, and in here we want to pass in what we want to watch, which is the name, and then a function. Okay, and this function will take in new value, old value, and key path. Okay, now we can have anything we want happen when the name changes or a name is added, whatever. So let's just do a console log. Okay, something very simple. And we're going to console log the key path, and then let's concatenate a string. We'll say changed to, and then add on new value. Okay, so now if we save that and we run it, it's going to say name changed to Brad, because that was the initial assignment up here. Now if we were to set that, we'll say name Sean, and we reload, we get name changed to Sean. Okay, so it's constantly watching name and then does whatever we ask it to anytime it's set or updated or changed in any way. Now if we want to watch something like friends, which is an array of objects, if I was to change this right here, name to friends, and reload, you'll see we get friends changed to, and then just a bunch of objects. Alright, now we can target what we want to watch. If we say, for instance, friends.one, which would be Mike, reload. Now Mike is an object, so we have to specify what property we want. So let's say .name, reload, and you can see friends.one.name is the key path, and it changed to Mike. Okay, now we can also use patterns. If we want to watch all of these, we can replace the one here with a wildcard with an asterisk. And now if we run that, it's going to run for all of them. Okay, so it shows us John, Mike, and Jen. Now let's say we add a property to one of the friends. So right here, let's say Ractive.set, and let's do friends.one, which is Mike, and we're gonna actually, no, what we'll do is say friends.one.isBest. Okay, so we'll add a property called isBest and set that to true, and then let's change this observer to watch for isBest. Alright, so we'll save that and reload, and you can see that we get friends is best changed to undefined. So Mike is the only one that changed to true. So this console log, this isn't really, it doesn't really make sense for what we're checking for. So let's comment that out. And what we'll do is check, we'll say if new value dot is best. Okay, so if that's true, then we want to console.log, and in here we'll say, no, we'll do key path, or actually no, let's do new value. So new value dot name, we'll say new value name, and then we'll concatenate is my best friend. Okay, so if we go and reload, new value dot name. Oh, we need to get rid of this is best. We want to watch just for the friends. Reload, and now we get Mike is my best friend. Alright, if I was to change this to, let's say 2, and reload, we get Jen is my best friend. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and stop here. I think I covered all of the basics and fundamentals of Ractive, and hopefully you found it interesting. And you can see how easy it is. If you have experience with Angular or React, this is very similar, and I think it's even a little bit easier. So I would suggest looking more into it, read the documentation, check out the course that we created at edgeonix.com. I don't have a link yet, but I'll put it in the description when it's published. We just finished it yesterday, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.